You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Inez Ribostello.
And I'm your co-host, Cappy Pete. I'm the beverage director for AC Restaurants right here in Raleigh. I'm happy to be back on the show for the second time. I came on almost 3 years ago when I first moved to Raleigh from Charleston, South Carolina.
You and me both, Cappy. I was on about 3 years ago, too, back in the day when it was in Max's apartment. And I'm co-owner of Tarboro Brewing Company, TBC West, and On the Square Restaurant and Wine Store in eastern North Carolina. They've actually hosted a show at Tarboro Brewing Company where we interviewed John Wright of Sanctuary Vineyards. So
very cool.
Excited to be back in this really fancy, swanky sound studio.
Very swanky. And we're here today with Amy Bess Cook, who was named Imbibe Magazine's 2019 Wine Person of the Year.
2 years ago, Amy launched Women-Owned Wineries, or WOW, which is an online club, directory, and forum focused on women's participation in the wine industry.
So even though Matt and Max have a huge interest in the topic of wine, it just made sense to lock them out of the studio and take matters into our own hands. Amy Bess, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's connect the dots back to North Carolina. Amy, how are you related to our state?
I was born here and I lived here for 25 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Right? I was born in Garner, went to school in Raleigh, Enloe High School graduate.
Yes.
App State graduate.
Nice.
When I was 25 years old, I sold everything I owned, packed up, and moved to San Francisco. And I've lived in California ever since. That's a long time. I'm not going to give you my age, but it's a couple of decades actually. So, so I've been in Sonoma now for 10 years.
What were you doing in San Francisco?
I had actually moved out to San Francisco to be a part of indie publishing. I had worked in Asheville at the now defunct but long flourishing Lark Books, which was a fine craft book publisher. They published books like on Penland School of Craft and a lot of fine craft that was connected with the mountains there and beyond. And I loved the communications work that I did there and the writing and the publishing. And I went to San Francisco because they have a great indie publishing community. So I did that for about 5 years and then moved to Sonoma as a freelance writer during the recession. Yeah, thus another adventure began. And so when I moved to Sonoma County, I moved up there sort of not knowing anybody, just looking for a little bit of peace and quiet. I guess my inner North Carolinian came out and wanted some quiet. In the light of the recession, you're looking for clients. You're a freelance writer, you're looking for clients. And the two industries up there are wine and dairy. So I very quickly ascertained that I needed to learn about grapes or cows. So I picked the more glamorous of the two, I suppose, and dove into the wine industry head first. I got a job at a winery there, was actually their first full-time employee, and was very quickly able to learn every side of the industry just by sort of apprenticing a winemaker there. And I stayed for a very long time, like 8 years there.
So the winery's still there? Yeah.
Yeah. It's Tin Barn Vineyards. They do a lot of custom crush work, actually. So they've probably custom crushed some of your favorite brands. So, yes.
Amy Bess, when did you start Women-Owned Wineries?
So it was a couple of months after I had left my winery job and I had begun freelancing again. I'd been thinking about... things were starting to, I guess, rise on that topic. Elections were happening and...
Go deep.
Yeah.
We want to hear.
I think no matter where you were and who you voted for. Watching the way that female candidates were treated in the election cycle that year, it was very difficult. It was actually enraging to watch that. And that was also the year that it was before Harvey Weinstein case broke by about a month. But the Bill Cosby case was in the middle of breaking. And the fact that all of that was kind of happening at the same time, as I myself was experiencing and observing some issues within the industry, it's like you feel it in your own life. You observe it in the industry elsewhere. You see friends going through it, and you see it in the news. And you just, at some point, you're just like, I don't think so.
Right.
And in my own mind, what I saw was, there are all these problems that we keep having to take to the table and ask men, will you fix this? No, really, will you fix this for us? And I just thought, this is dumb. Like, let's put money in the hands of women, and we don't have to ask for permission anymore. We don't have to ask for anybody to fix the problems for us. Women, when given the power, may or may not fix the issue. Who knows? But we don't know because nobody's given women that power in the wine industry yet. Not really. So I guess that you just heard me kind of like I do get excited. So doing this project is kind of a balance of I think that anger is something that many colleagues carry, and we're asked to mask because we're in an industry where hospitality is, you can't be angry in hospitality, right? So we're asked to mask all of that. But that anger, I know, is something a lot of us feel, and we have to give it space, or we cannot change the dynamic, and the dynamic is very unhealthy. In production and hospitality, in the boardrooms, in the C-suites and all of that. So I just started to ask the question: okay, well, if I personally want to give my money to women in the wine industry, how do I even do that? And I went online and kind of Googled, and I found a lot of articles about powerful women in wine, but none of them were winery owner, or not none of them, but I couldn't find a source for woman-owned wineries. I couldn't find anything definitive around that, so I just started researching it. At first, I started with Sonoma County, and this was, or not incidentally, rather, this was around the time of the wildfires. I started the project while I was evacuated from my home from the 2017 wildfires, so it kind of felt like an appropriate thing to do to give back to the community, sort of say, patronize local establishments, patronize local female-owned establishments. And the response to that was so strong that I then expanded nationwide and invested in building the directory of women-owned wineries to a nationwide project. And once I had done that, I had run a wine club for 8 years. I knew how to do it, so I just decided to build a wine club on that and make it that much easier for folks to buy from these women and say, hey, you know what, we'll deliver to your doorstep. You don't have to go out and search for these wineries. You don't have to look them up on the directory. We'll choose the wines for you, and we'll deliver them to your doorstep. So that's what we're doing. What has arisen from all of that, of course, inevitably, is that the winery owners themselves are organically organizing, and we would like to offer them a formal membership program. But sure. I want to do it right, I guess, which is why I've waited to do it. So that's where we are.
It's all Sonoma wines in the wine club?
No, it's actually it's nationwide. So we've had wines from Texas. That's what the Sangiovese is, a Texas wine.
Awesome.
We've had Washington wines and Oregon wines, and I'm trying to show. That's another thing I'm trying to show is just there are hardworking women across the nation.
Absolutely.
Doing this. Idaho's has some great hardworking female winemakers. So I love that.
The director is really impressive.
Thank you.
Very convenient.
Thanks.
How do you determine what wines go out each month?
It's at this point, it's kind of what I get passionate about and what I get excited about. I love the idea of having guest somms. Hello. But I haven't gotten organized enough to do that yet. But I like that idea. I think it's been important to, I guess, establish my own relationship with the members and let them know kind of get a sense of their tastes and let them know, kind of steer the project in my own direction as well. I definitely base it on who I think is operating ethically and who needs the support as well. Most of them have been, I think all of them have been small producers for sure. And they're people I like, who I think are running a good ship. And it's very hard to analyze that, like, without being a part of their ship, right? Like, without being a part of their team. But, like, I just really try to do my homework on these guys before, as much as possible. But
I thought it was really inspiring hearing you say that, the only way or the best way to make systems change is to put money in the hands of female business owners, in your case, female-owned wineries. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think it's a complex topic, but Melinda Gates said...
Yes. I was hoping you'd The Moment of Lift or The Power of Lift.
Yes.
It's been the best book. I read Becoming, too, in 2018, so I don't know. Both of those books are...
So when money flows into the hands of women, what did you say? The whole world can change, and it's so true. And it's true of I think, any marginalized people, basically, that so much of the marginalization occurs because it's financial. So much abuse occurs financially. So much abuse occurs because people feel they have to put up with things because they don't have any other choice, And I think we are individually, it's hard to believe that we as consumers have the power to make any change just by buying anything. It's also very easy to get cynical about it and say, like, really? I can buy more stuff and change the world? Because that doesn't sound likely. I mean, hey, I get it. Like, I really get that. I think a lot of us are trying to dial back our consumerism. I fully support that. I'm not trying to get people to buy more things, Sure. I think I'm trying to get people to understand that their money counts basically as a vote. You are voting with your... This is a capitalist society for the moment. And so you're voting every time you spend your dollars. When you spend at a local shop instead of a corporate shop, you're supporting that person and their family and everyone that they've employed.
So let's take a quick break from today's show to talk about our new sponsor on the podcast. It's the Butcher's Market. Matt, there's a Butcher's Market in your neck of the woods. There's a Butcher's Market in my neck of the woods. And it kind of makes sense for them to join up with what we do because, of course, it's a North Carolina-based company, but more importantly, it's about people. It's about building a culture. You can buy your steaks wherever you want to buy them, but when you know where the sourcing is and you know the person that's handing it to you, they can help you figure out tonight's meal, or they can just help you figure out what you're actually putting into your bodies. That's why the Butcher's Market's here.
Yeah, and they have locations in Holly Springs, they're in Cary, they're in Raleigh, and soon to be in Bedford. And I got to tell you, my kid loves hot dogs, but he loves the Butcher's Market hot dogs. So it's so convenient. Go there, buy a couple of hot dogs. My wife loves the burgers. They're already prepared, already seasoned. All you literally have to do is throw them on the grill, and voila, you have an amazing meal, because you can also buy prepared vegetables too, which are great and seasoned, and you just throw those in the oven for a little while, and you have an awesome meal. You didn't spend a lot of money, and you didn't have to work that hard for it.
That hamburger blend is chuck, ribeye, and a little bit of brisket. It's like an 85%, meaning you get a little bit of fat content, and that's where the flavor is, man. That's where the flavor comes from.
Which one is that called?
That's their Butcher's Blend.
So for those of you that are looking to break into the restaurant industry or kind of pivot from where you've been in the restaurant industry, the Butcher's Market is a great venue for that. It's quality of service, quality of people, plus you get to do both, where you get to learn how to be a butcher, or maybe you already know how to be a butcher, but maybe you've had that kind of feeling that, I'm a front of the house person, and you like and enjoy speaking with people. Well, here you get to speak to people as well, and you get to get excited about the flavors going on in the meats, and get excited about how you prepare it, what sauce you might use, what temperatures you might use. Interaction, quality of life, quality of employment.
So for more information, go to thebutchersmarkets.com. That's butchersmarkets.com. Remember, the Butchers Markets, they're your neighborhood butcher and specialty grocer, providing our guests with premium meats, local products, and excellent hospitality every day.
This segment is brought to you by the Triangle Wine Company. Visit Triangle Wine Company stores in Morrisville, Cary, and Southern Pines, North Carolina. Or order your wine and beer online at trianglewineco.com. And be sure to use our promo code NCFB to receive 10% off your purchases. Triangle Wine Company.
It's easy to just believe that we don't have the power to, as individuals, to be effective as conscious consumers, but I beg to differ. And that's largely what this project is about. It's about being conscious of how we spend our money and recognizing that putting money toward women is part of the solution. And in order to understand that better, I guess we'd have to drill down into the gender-based entrepreneurial gap in the wine business. That can be a difficult thing for some people to want to believe. But the bottom line is that it's more difficult for women to succeed in business. It is especially difficult for women to succeed in a male-dominated business.
I think conscious-driven leadership, conscious-driven consumerism, if we're just driven by our conscience, we might be a lot of good change.
Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that the companies don't also have responsibility. Of course they do. Mm-hmm. But we have responsibility as well. And the companies do listen to us if we act, in mass. Like, why is there so much orange wine on the market? Well, consumers are drinking it, right?
Absolutely.
So, it's the companies and it's the consumers who have the responsibility to act.
When I was reading through a recent interview of yours, and actually I'm not sure how recent it was, but there were some really shocking statistics that you cited. The ones that Inez and I were both agreeing on that stood out to us was that in 2017, only 2.7% of venture capital went to women.
That number went down last year, just saying. By a percent, like a point percentage, yeah. But
from, when I was trying to raise money to open the brewery, I was, pitching it. And it was really hard. And everybody said to me, it will never be harder than just raising the money, which was kind of a lie.
Sure.
The first 2 years having zero money and trying to operate were pretty bad.
There's a lot that's hard about this, actually. Yeah.
But, for women to only get 2.7% of venture capitalists, and then, 0.4 are women of color?
Yes.
Which is
Come on.
disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in hearing these female-owned wineries that you have, put together. Like, do you, and I know you don't want to speak for people. I've heard you say you don't want to share their story, but have they shared anything with you that you're comfortable sharing about raising money?
Well, I can tell you that a couple of things. First of all, when I was at the Wonder Women of Wine conference in the spring, and, I spoke on a panel about entrepreneurship. And then at the end of that, one of the things I wanted to share with them was this kind of resource bank for entrepreneurs. Kind of here are some here are loans, agricultural loans, loans for women, grants, basically all this information around money, around getting money. I am telling you, that whole room was just glued. It's a topic no one ever talks about, especially in a luxury industry. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about class. Whole other topic. I got things to say there about,
Do it.
I mean, but around the funding, it's something we don't talk a lot about. It is absolutely key. And those women really needed that information. I am really encouraged by the number of, outside of the wine industry, and I'm sure there's some in it, but outside of the wine industry, there are resources like Sally Krawcheck, who is actually a UNC grad. I don't know if you guys know about her, but she has launched Elvest and Elevate, which are hubs for women's investing and for financial education for women. There are a lot of women entrepreneurs who take advantage of those resources, and I definitely have. My heroine, for sure, is Karen Kahn, who's kind of in cahoots with Sally sometimes, but she runs I Fund Women, which is kind of like a Kickstarter, all for women's companies. She is so just transparent and just real talk about how hard it is to, for women to fund. I will say transparently now that I do business coaching through them. Like I use them as a business coach because it can be very isolating sometimes to run a business, and you just need to be like, somebody tell me if I'm crazy, or somebody tell me what to do, And it's great to have people around you to give you kind of a reality check or, help like that. But they have been a wonderful resource.
This segment is brought to you by our brand new sponsor, the Folks Foundation. They are champions of all good things crafted in North Carolina and the folks that make them. And so for you, as a listener, you can sign up and become a member of the Folks Foundation. As a member, you are directly supporting makers, growers, crafters, and artisans of North Carolina, from the mountains to the sea. And when you support, you are benefiting handcrafted culture in our state that directly affects our lives every single day, from local products that we eat to the music and podcast production we listen to every day. But membership packages include a subscription to the Folks Journal, discounts to their general store, which has amazing products online, and access to exclusive content. So visit them at folksfoundation.org or check the link on our show notes in the podcast. That's the Folks Foundation.
I think it's incredibly important for women winery owners and for any business owner, any woman who wants to own a business and any business owner, period, to really recognize that funding piece and not feel ashamed around it at all. Recognize that, it is kind of rigged against you. 2.7% of venture capital went to women in 2017, and that number dropped, I think, to 2.3% the next year. The number is not getting any better. And if you want to fund a business, it's going to be hard. Grants, loans, or not, no, I wouldn't even say loans, because, discrimination occurs at the bank like nobody's business. Mm-hmm. I think that the answer to that is to look to other women for that support. And that's why these projects like Women-Owned Wineries and others feel important to me. Mm-hmm. You have to look to one another for that support. And I'll just add to that, there are some winemakers who have spoken very candidly about money. The one that comes to mind is Megan of Margins Wine. I feel like, in her social media, in her speech, sort of everywhere she goes, she's just very candid about working multiple jobs, not getting money from outside sources, the difficulty of the hustle. And I think that's really important to convey because it speaks to the difficulty of women's journey in wine, but also it sort of breaks the facade of wine as this purely luxury product. And it's an agricultural product. It's incredibly difficult to create on a really authentic level and sustain as a business. And that's not to say that people don't do it in other ways, but those other ways are not sustainable either. So
right.
I appreciate the people who, talk about it openly.
I just want to kind of go back to two things. Firstly, I really appreciate that you use that word shame because I've felt that as a business owner, and it's a very real. It's tough. But at 42 years old, I switched over to female attorney, female accountant, and started surrounding myself with females as coaches, and it changed the world for me, and it let go of a lot of shame. There was no shaming when I was having these conversations. And so I feel like that's what you're doing with female winery owners. You're getting them the network they need where they can have really hard conversations and not feel embarrassed or like that it's their fault or that they've done something wrong or that they didn't do something. I go on about that.
I mean, I hope so. That would be wonderful. I sort of see this project as, one of a number of projects that are hopefully providing that network. And I think when it first launched, it was probably one of only a handful. And I like to see the proliferation of those networks, like events like Batonage cropping up, and there's a new one now in Oregon next month, Assemblage. There's so many projects like this kind of happening all the time, and I like to see how women are organizing in different areas. I want to be connected to those groups, and I want to know those, but I don't feel any, it's a non-competitive thing, right? It's like we need so many layers of that organization that it's just ridiculous. It's infinite. And so it's so encouraging to me to see all of that. I think one of the things, sort of to your point, one of the most important things that emerges from those groups is just the conversation. Many of us don't necessarily know what the answers are. Some solutions are emerging, but one solution is not over, that might be right over here, might not be right for another place. But just having the conversation destigmatizes so many of these issues. The money issues, abuse issues, all kinds of issues, maternal leave issues, like any issues that really women bear the brunt of. Simply by talking about them more, we are making a difference, I believe. And, that sounds easy. It's like, oh, we just talk about it and it's better. But it's incredibly difficult to talk about these things because we can be punished, actually, for talking about them. It's just that simple. Things like getting a raise, like we can be punished for asking for raises. We can be punished for, just like list anything. So
Negotiating.
Mm-hmm. But the more we do it, the less I think they can punish us. So this project is one of many, I think, now that are trying to do that. And I do think there's also some pop feminism out there that's, taking it a little lighter and maybe capitalizing off of I think, you'll see like girl power t-shirts or like, which
right.
I think I would wear with pride too. That's great. You know what I mean? Like, but I think sometimes I see products marketed toward women that might be feminists, or like experiences marketed toward women, or I guess I'm always so afraid that someone is going to think that this is like, oh, wine and women, oh, cheers, and oh, we're just like hanging out and having some chat and like some girl time, It sounds like that sometimes, I think, to some people. Wine and women, like it's fluffy. And we can have fun for sure, but like we're advocating for ourselves. Yes. This is actually important. Like this is serious, Mm-hmm. So, and it's hard to present too, because and I appreciate the forum to do it here, because I think sometimes people want to hear that side of it. We can talk about that, but it has, I think, roots with considerably more depth.
It also, it's very degrading asking men for money as a female. It's not fun.
No. Amen. It's like, especially if you've worked you've already worked for men probably at some point in your career, and then you're like, I'm going to do this my way, and then you just have to go back to men and ask for money. You're like, okay, I don't know. Do you guys watch Mrs. Maisel?
Oh my gosh.
You can
edit
this out of you. Hilarious.
But,
so funny.
Right? So like, okay, but have you seen season 3? Okay, I'm not going to give the spoiler.
I have.
There's some
So
definite
good.
like men dependency things that emerge there that make me very nervous for Mrs. Maisel. I'm just going to say, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I completely agree.
No spoilers. I won't give it away. But anyway, it's a man is not a plan, right? Like,
Man is not a plan. Have you found that there are men joining the wine club, or men reaching out to be a part of the support?
It brings such a smile to my face to see men join, or even for them to like give it as a gift, for their friends. Yeah, it's lovely when they get enthusiastic, or they'll like buy a T-shirt and send a photo of themselves in the T-shirt. Like it makes me so excited.
That's good.
And I was telling Max, this wine, the Bannister Riesling that we're drinking now, this is a woman-owned winery. This is Marty Bannister, who is the co-founder, along with Marianne Groff, of Inartis Vinquery, which is like one of the lab testing services, one of the first lab testing services in the area, and is now owned by Italians. But she was a pioneer of sorts in the lab. She's now passing it along to her son. She's older now, so she's passing it along to her son. But I brought this wine specifically because it's an example of, a male ally who we work with. And, Brooke Bannister, her son, has been wonderfully supportive of women-owned wineries. So we need that too. It's great.
Definitely.
Yeah.
When you go to your website, you know, one of the first words you see is the storytelling. And I really am.
She's a great storyteller.
I love storytelling. And so will you talk about why that's a big piece of women-owned wine, or WOW, and you?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. That's close to my heart too, and I love to hear that, you know, people have respond to that at all. You know, as I mentioned earlier, my background is in publishing, and you know, definitely writing, you know, is my first love, I guess. But on another level, I guess that's a skill I want to weave into this, but also, importantly, I just want to cultivate a place where these women are seen and where their perspective is integrated. I think I am encouraged, you know, as more and more woman-centric projects emerge in the wine industry and in the world. I am encouraged by the number of projects. Like, I've noticed the Vintner Project has brought a lot more women into view, and Wonder Women of Wine, I think every week they highlight someone, and a lot of women are being more pushed, or not pushed, but a light is shown on more and more women. But I sort of don't think we can do enough of it. And I'm really happy to continue to do that, just to offer a little space where women can offer their perspective. So I've been trying to interview each of the people who we work with, each of the vintners who we work with. And it is interesting to me how their perspective really varies. Like, they're all coming from such different places. Ashley Trout from Walla Walla, Washington, who runs Brook and Bull, sort of as her bread and butter for-profit winery. And then Vital Wines is her other label, completely run on donations, donated grapes, donated bottles, donated labels, everything. And then all the profits go to a local health clinic that cares for vineyard workers and, you know, seasonal laborers of all sorts who are tied to the wine industry. So, you know, and she sort of tells in the interview, like, why that's important to her. Allison Smith's story of Smith Story Wines, you know, she works with her husband, actually, and with Katie Wilson to make the wines. But she is a businesswoman, you know. She's really a businesswoman, and that's her perspective. And I think it takes all kinds to really make a successful project. So, like, I want to include strong leaders like her, too, and show how it takes, like, it's not just the winemaker in the barrel room making these wines. It's like women with killer communication skills, incredible people skills, incredible organizational skills, ahead for numbers, because Allie really has it. Like, she really helped me when I was putting my business together too, who really make these businesses tick. And I like including that in the storytelling section, I guess. I'd love to expand that. So, yeah.
That's really neat. Previous guest of the show, Jennifer Reichart of Raft Wines, is who connected us to you. Yeah, I really enjoy her wines. We work with a couple of them, one at Pools and one at Poolside, and I really love what she's been doing. What's your connection with her?
I'm just going to have to hand it to Jen all the way around. She is one of those women who just consistently supports other women. Like, she is there for you. When I first started this project, and I don't even know how I really got introduced to her, or if I formally did, but I sort of put a call out, like, I think I posted on Instagram or something, like, that I was doing this project, and somehow she wound up volunteering for my video for my I Fund Women crowdfunding campaign, right? Even before that, she had volunteered bottles. Like, the very first event I didn't pour at, but I presented at, was the Women's March in Sonoma back in 2018 in January. And she physically showed up and brought me those bottles. She is just always there. And I think it's so hard to do that. I mean, there are a lot of places to be. I personally have a hard time making it everywhere, you know? So I was immediately impressed by her just enthusiasm for the cause. So she did wind up appearing in the Kickstarter video, or the I Fund Women video, and she just continues to be a real supporter. So I hope to include her wines in our club this year. We're working on the shipping issue, trying to get it straight. But I'd love to ship her wines out, maybe in the spring. So,
That's great.
yeah.
Are there women who have been there since the beginning, since your move to San Francisco even, that are in the industry who have played a part in how you're conducting not just your business but your life now?
Maybe not since my move to San Francisco, because that was sort of a different chapter. That was like the publishing chapter. But since my move to Sonoma, probably, I would say people who have crossed that, the personal professional divide and have just been a good supportive network. Kathy Hoya is definitely someone who has been a friend, has been a mentor, has professionally supported me, is a member of our wine club, and she I think in fact she was the first member of our wine club. So she has just really been there. Kathy is for those listening, she's a journalist who writes for Inc. and for Forbes, but she runs a wine data company called Analytics, and she is also the co-founder of A Balanced Glass, which is promoting wellness in the wine industry, along with Rebecca Hopkins, who I would also put on that list. As just being a total sort of in your corner cheerleader.
I would say maybe monthly texts, little boost texts from Kathy, just checking in to see how you are. And there are times after we'll have great conversations, and then I'll just get a book in the mail, that's on sometimes it's starting your own business. Sometimes it's just about, learning leadership skills as a woman, or just like, it's awesome. She's great.
Has she sent you Playing Big by Tara Moore?
Yes, she has.
I love that book.
I think that was the first one.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it's definitely, it's a small town, right? So, and I guess neither of those people are actually in the town, but Kathy's in Atlanta.
Absolutely.
So it's the industry is all over the world, and it's wonderful to feel that support from all over. So.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the wine club? How does someone go about joining?
Well, the wine club, it has been bi-monthly, so we've been going every other month, but we are shifting to a monthly delivery.
Wonderful.
So it's 3 wines every month. Each month we highlight a different winery, so we're really able to focus on that winery and let you know what that vintner is up to and allow you to explore their offerings. So we choose 3 bottles. It's $92. Annual subscribers get those wines delivered with shipping fees included, while a la carte members, so like you could take a shipment here and a shipment there. If you just wanted to try a shipment, for fun, you would wind up paying the shipping fees on top of that. But we don't want to tie anyone down, basically, is what I'm saying. Like we want you to experiment and see what you like. So yeah, that's the wine club.
Can you tell us about this other wine that you brought today for us to try?
I will, yeah. So we've talked about the Bannister. Let's talk about this other wine. It is from Ray Wilson. She runs sort of an umbrella label called Wine for the People. And under that label, she runs several brands. The Grower Project, which is this one, and Dandy Pink. Ray is a big promoter of Texas wines. She's been there for about a decade. She has a somm background, but also a production background, working harvests in Napa and I think in Portugal. But she has just really been a big advocate of family vineyards in Texas, as Texas has slowly come more into focus for a lot of wine lovers. And she makes minimal intervention wines. This is from the High Plains region of Texas, from a family vineyard there. It's just a really elegant Sangiovese. It's really, light-bodied and she's also, one reason I really like promoting her wines is she's just very community-minded. So always, kind of giving a cut back to the community or hosting fundraisers for the community. So I appreciate that as well. So our next shipment will be Damsel Cellars up in Washington State, Mari Womack. And so those are some like big, kind of lush red wines for wintertime. I hadn't done, more full-bodied wines, so I thought I should for winter. Yeah. And you can sign up at wowsonoma.com. Yeah.
great. Sangiovese is delicious.
It is. Would you mind sharing all of your Instagram handles and all that stuff so people can know where to follow you?
Sure. Our Instagram is Wow Sonoma. Our Twitter is Wow Sonoma. Our Facebook is Wow Sonoma. And all of that is actually a little misleading because although we are Wow Sonoma, we are looking out for the whole country. So we are interested in wines across the country. We just know where some of our roots are. Some of our roots are in Sonoma. Some of them are right here in North Carolina.
That's right.
Cappy, while we have this amazing conversation going, are you comfortable at all sharing any inequities that you've experienced in the workplace because of gender?
Sure. Mine all have been a little different. Mostly, I would say I recognized them most once I'd been promoted into a management position or a sommelier buying position and was pretty successful right off the rip, just selling lots of wine on the floor. We were just experiencing a lot more staff engagement, and sales were up pretty significantly from the year prior. And it was kind of as though my successes were met with excuses, or they would say, oh, it's probably because you're so nurturing and the staff really just loves working with you, or you're just like a cute girl and so everybody wants to buy wine from you. Not it's your organization and drive and skill and talent.
Phenomenal skill set.
Right. So I dealt with a lot of that just because I was so young and relatively inexperienced, and I knew that, but I was kind of surprised to hear, that it was tied back to just the qualities of being a woman pretty consistently. That was my most, early on. I don't know. Just the typical, working the floor and always being asked to come send them over, send the somm over, and then when I come in, they would be like, "Oh, is your boss out for the night or something or other?" It was just never like, "Great, thanks for coming over. Can't wait to talk wine with you." It wasn't, I feel like that's experienced pretty typically in the sommelier position, especially. I think that people expect to see, an older gentleman wearing a fancy suit or a taste event or something like that. But how about you?
Yeah, I've had, I went to work in wine in 1998, and, I was taking a management position that was formerly held by a male who was making 42, and I knew that, and they said the most we can offer you is 38, and I didn't even, balk. I said, okay, I'll take it, because desperate to be able to call home and say, you guys, I'm in a management position at 22 years old. And so I was more proud than comfortable negotiating. But what's crazy is you fast forward to 2019 and you have people say things that are just incredibly sexist or racist. Because of my name, I've greeted people and they've said to me, "Oh, I didn't know you'd speak English."
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, "Oh, wow, you're pretty brazen to say that."
No kidding.
That's 2019 and people are saying things like that. So it's just, it's sad and disheartening. And, I think all we can do is educate, and not back down on how often we're talking about this. And I feel the privilege of my race that I need to be saying that in every circle I'm in. And I'm going to use my my female woman, my gender, to say it to men in addition. And just, I'm not going to live in fear that I'm not going to get something because I'm speaking on behalf of people who don't have advocacy.
Do you have any stories like that?
Oh, do I? I do, but I think that it's difficult to be kind of at the helm of a project like this and get super personal about it. And it's not that I don't want to do that. I think there's sort of a place for me to do that. I wrote a little bit about abuse issues in 750 Daily this summer, and sort of the conditions that cause that, I believe, in the wine industry specifically. And I think so many of the stories that I hear, I mean, there's like common prejudice that you hear sort of repeated over and over. It's like, why don't people just get past these issues? And they seem to go on for decades, sort of like what you're saying. And then there are sort of entrenched cultural practices. By cultural, I mean like within our industry, that we're really, I think, capable of solving if we can bring them to light. And I think that's what I'm most interested in, and in telling. Not that the other stuff is important. All of it is important. But I think I'm interested in what I know I can change. That's all I'm saying. And so I would like to share my experience as, I guess, strategically. Mm-hmm. I think the article that I wrote, I talked a bit about retaliation and how common that is when women share their experiences. Mm. I spoke for that piece with some other key women in the industry. Lauren Friel has been such a voice.
Love her.
Right. I'm so just blown away by her.
Her Instagram is so inspiring constantly.
And, you know, I look at women like her and Ashton Berry, who I also spoke with for the article, and I feel like, well, why can't I just be more vocal? Or, you know, like I guess, and then some people look at me and are like, oh, you're being really vocal. I'm like, I'm not being vocal enough. There's so much more where this came from, you know? But I think that the truth is, like, I feel like it's important to be really strategic with those stories, because I worry that someone's going to stop listening, or that when I do tell it won't have the impact that it needs to have, or that change won't really occur. Basically, it'll fall on deaf ears or something like that. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever worry, like, one thing people say about me is that I have unbridled emotion?
Oh, yeah.
And
An
so,
ocean of emotion. Yeah. My dad says that.
Do you worry that it could be, people could look at the piece and not see the points, but see more of, she just went unhinged.
Outburst.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, so I was really strategic with that piece not to be super emotional, and I try to be in general when I talk about these things. Like it does, as you have seen earlier in this interview, like, it does make me emotional. It is, and I'm not sorry for that. And I think anger is useful. I think emotion is useful, but I think when we share that openly, it is not always, doesn't always accomplish the goal we intend for it to. So I think we can share it. Like, let's go have drinks, you know? Like,
Yeah.
But I think in trying to create, like, policy change, I would like to be strategic in, I guess, sharing that stuff. It's so rampant. It's so rampant. And I think the issues, the primary, I think, issues are sort of like the wine industry and a lot of the food industry too, I think, is like, it's a lot of small businesses. Those small businesses don't have the infrastructure for, like, HR or any kind of support for employees. And all kinds of things happen in those industries. It's a social industry, like wine, food, and hospitality, all of that. It's very social. So it's not like we're ignoring each other when we come in, right? Like, we connect. We're here to connect. Back to what I said earlier, that, like, we accommodate things that we shouldn't accommodate, and that leads to abuse. That lays the groundwork for abuse. So
that hospitality mindset. Well, we could clearly go on for hours. I know there's so many topics you said we could come back to that we didn't have a chance to. Or do you have any closing comments or advice for the next generation as we finish up?
Yeah, I'd say keep the conversation going. We're going to close the conversation because we could go on forever, but I hope others out there will continue the conversation because, as we said earlier, that's what normalizes it. That's what removes the stigma. And I would also say recognize your own power. Not just your buying power, but your power, period. Your power to speak up, your power to do, whatever you can do in the world. Buying from woman-owned wineries and raising a glass in their name is actually a very powerful thing to do. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for being here.
We have some proof ice cream as a parting gift. We hope you will enjoy it.
Female-owned proof alcohol ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Eat and drink merrily.
You got it.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.